welcome to our EVE Online videos, and in this video we'll be showing you how to make passive income with PI. So in this video we're going to be showing you how to create passive income in PI by creating Wetwares.
The skills you'll need for this setup, you will need as a mandatory skills, you will need Command Centers 5. You'll be unable to do this setup due to the limits of the buildings needed for this. You will need a remote sensing at least level 1 to be able to access the planets at all. And then your interplanetary consolidation skill is the number of planets you have. The more of this skill you have, the more of these setups you can apply and clone it through several planets to increase and multiply profits further. The planetary skills, both planetary and advanced planetary, both are not needed for the factory setup that we will be doing today. These planets can only be set up on Barren centers and temperate planets. You cannot do these on any other planet type. Barren is better due to usually having a smaller radius, making fitting requirements better.
So for moving things around like your Barren command centers, as you can see, I've purchased 6 because I can build on 6 planets. But you're going to need a ship, something like the Epithel, anything that has got command center holds where these can just plonk inside. To be able to create factories on planets, you need to go onto Barren planets. All of this can be done in HiSec, which we currently are in HiSec. And ideally you want to try and find a system that has got, I would say, always say 3 or more Barren planets. The system we currently are in has 6, which is perfect, means I don't need to bounce around. But if you are looking for anywhere, no matter where you are stationed, anywhere in HiSec, make sure you are looking for Barren planets.
In order to start this process, you must place your command centers onto the planet. In order to do this, you have to be in the exact same system as the planet you are for, and you have to be in space, meaning you cannot be docked up, but you can be anywhere within the solar system. So the best, safest way to do this would be to tether to a player station and use the protection of a tether to keep you out of danger while you set up these planets.
So on a side note, when you are looking for these Barren planets, check the POCOs, so the custom offices, because these determine basically what income you're going to make or how much income you could potentially make, because each one has a tax rate. What you are ideally looking for is anything with 15% or lower. Now, as you can see here, we're at 10%. That is due to my skills. You can bring the tax rate down for the customs office in your skill tree. To be able to bring down your tax rates for the customs officers, you are looking for the skill that is custom code expertise. This skill will reduce taxes of import and export between yourself and the customs office. Each level for this skill will reduce the tax between the customs office and the planet, there and back, therefore generating you more profit, but it reduces it by 10%. As you can see, we're at the max level, so for this area we've got it down to 10%, which is the lowest we can get this down to. So now we're all tethered up. We have our Barren command centers in our hold. We need to now know how to put these onto a planet. So open up a Barren planet by pressing the View Planetary Industry, and it will show you the planet and what it looks like. Now with this, we don't have to worry about having to move things around because resources are taken, because it doesn't work like that. We are making things.
Once you've chosen your planet and got everything set up ready to go, once you see this planet interface, make sure in the upper left that you are on the Build tab and not the Scan tab. The Scan tab is for another side of planetary interaction that we will not be doing. That's for people trying to extract resources. As a factory planet is named, we are literally just inputting our own materials, making something and extracting out, basically acting as a factory. So for this process, it's always the build menu you're looking at here. The first step you'll need to do is placing your command center down on the planet, as this allows you to then be able to build and process everything on the planet. You just select your command center and go to place it anywhere you'd like on the planet. Positioning on the planet itself does not matter. You can place it anywhere you want. Just note that every time you load this planet, it'll load towards your command center. So have your factory set up near where you place your command center on the planet's surface. Once you picked a spot you're happy with, you can place your command center onto the planet anywhere you'd like. Then once you've placed it, you will have to submit in the top left-hand corner to confirm the command center has been placed onto the planet. Now your command center is down, you now have the ability to build and do things on this planet. you have access to now continue your process here. Due to the requirements that we're going to need for the setup we are doing today, the first step you're going to want to do is to return to your command center by clicking on it and going to the upgrade button, which will be on the little white circle with the green icon to it. And then when you see this bar, you're going to want to max the bar out. This is your command center up skill. For this setup, you want to completely max the planet out. And then again, once you've done your upgrade, you need to submit it so it locks in this change. Now you are set up and ready to start building. With the process today, we'll start by setting all the infrastructure down, and then we'll worry about the finicky finite stuff in the background. For the first step, for the way we're going to set these planets up, we shall start with a single high-tech factory. You'll be able to notice the high-tech and the different industry types on the left-hand side build menu. We will be starting with a single high-tech factory that you can place where you want to be the center of your setup. Again, you can place this anywhere you'd like on the planet's surface. For the ease of finding it all again later, you want it to be semi-near your command center so you don't lose the whole setup to where it is on the planet. Then once you have the high-tech industry, this is where we'll be making the P4 itself. You can submit in every step of the way here. You can do a lot of this placing and then hit the submit button if you'd like to help streamline things. Just note that until you hit submit, any changes you have made can be potentially lost if you happen to disconnect, leave the menu, etc. From the high-tech facility that will be the center of our setup, you're then going to want to make an advanced factory and take them and place 3 of them in an almost triangular shape around your high-tech factory. When you do place these things, you are going to want to place it as close as you can to save resources. So if you push it to where it glows red and just pull it just off enough, the highlights that you can place it. By these things being closer, you will save more resources. Connect them together afterwards. You can submit this and save this one. Once you have these first 3 high-tech factories that will later become our tier 3 factories, to each one of these, continuing the triangular line building off each one of them, you are going to want to connect a launch pad to all 3 of those factories. To those 3 factories you want to connect the next step in the chain by putting a launch pad on each one of them. Your 3 launch pads. These will act both as our storage and as our input and output devices to put the resources onto and off the planet. The final step for the final layout of the setup is to then use more advanced factories, and you're going to want to put 3 pairs of 2 coming off all 3 of your launch pads. So each launch pad should have 3 pairs of 2 coming off it. And this will be your factory layout. This will be the main infrastructure. Again, as long as these connections are flowing through each other, you can lay it out how you'd like. This is just how we're laying it out today. And the final step before we get into the nitty-gritty of all the recipes and connections to these things is we're going to connect every one of these pads up so they have the ability to transfer resources from one another to go through the chain. And you will do this by going create link on the left-hand side build menu. And once you have this active, if you click on one factory and move your mouse, you'll see a line form that you can then use to connect it to another factory. And all we'll do here is each pair, so that the one we have selected here will go to the factory to the right of it. That factory will then get linked to the launch pad. And again, from this launch pad, we will make 2 connections going straight up to connect those 2 launch pads there in the line to the launch pad. You want to connect each pair together, and then the pairs to the launch pad on all sides. then from each of our launch pads, you're going to want to connect to the next connect them to the factory that you have next to them towards the center configuration, and then each of those 3 configurations connecting to the center factory in the middle. Yep, so now everything's all connected up. These connections act as like roads for these factories to move materials from one another to allow the process chain to continue. So from there we can hit submit, and the main basis of our infrastructure is set up. Now we reach the nitty-gritty part that can be really annoying and is the most painful part of PI, and setting all this stuff up, but is a necessary evil to set this system up to make you money. And note that once you do these things, it is a one-time setup. You don't have to do this every time. These next 2 steps we're going to do is a one-time thing, and then it's just easy input materials, pull out materials. You won't have to mess around with this over and over and over again, thankfully. Once you've chosen a material you want to go for, today's material will be the wetware mainframe. So this is the information for the wetware mainframe. You'll be able to use this to what we're going to be doing today. This is our little secret recipe to how we lay our stuff out. Again, we will start in the center of the configuration and work it out. The info tab to follow the same order. So with our high-tech factory we have in the center of our configuration, we're going to want to click on the high-tech factory, and with the little pop-up that'll come from it once you select the factory, you'll see that a little drop-down menu will have a whole bunch of materials. This is where you're looking for the material you're going to make in each factory. This one in particular we'll be doing the wetware mainframes, so we shall select them and lock it in as our recipe. Once you select a material, it's going to come up with a create route button. Routing is this it's basically asking you, where shall I send this material to when I make it? You can pick any one of your 3 launch pads, it doesn't matter which one. Pick your favorite if you want to play favorites with launch pads, and choose a launch pad you'd like to send it to, and then you'll see the button will light up saying and then you can hit create route, and this will lock in that it now knows to make wetware mainframes, and once it has made them, it'll send them to that launch pad. And as you can see in our info, at the top of the list, it has wetware mainframes. So this is how we're going to batch. You'll then see under the wetware mainframe in the info screen, the main info on the screen itself, it'll tell you that it's going to take 3 particular products as inputs here. These 3 particular products, each one of those is each recipe once is what we're going to add to each of the 3 advanced factories right next to our high-tech. So the 3 first factories coming from our high-tech factory, each one of them will have its recipe set to each one of those input material. And then again, once you go to lock it in, it will ask for a route. Send these to the launch pad that is corresponding to the direction of the factory you're on. So the top one will go to the top, left will go left, right will go right. Now that we have our next tier of production locked in, we can lock it in so we don't lose our recipes being placed. And then our next step will be the last set of remaining factories on the outside of our launch pads. In our wetware info screen, for each of the 3 inputs, if you mouse over the input, you'll see a little box will pop up beside it, and this will tell you the 3 materials needed to make that material. Each of these 3 materials will have 2 factories dedicated to it. So using our bio reports here as our first material, you'll see that it needs each of those 3 materials be each one of the pairs coming off the launch pad. So if you go construction blocks, the first input is construction blocks. Both factories in this chain, in this pair we have here, will both be construction blocks, and then once you do them again, everything being routed to the corresponding launch pad. So we'll have 2 construction blocks, 2 nanites, etc. Each pair is for each one of those input materials. you must route it to the launch pad. And then the second one in the pair will also be construction blocks. We need 2 of these factories for each of these materials, as it needs to produce twice as much for the previous factory to be able to make its thing in time. Now that we've done the construction, you'll see that you can move to the next input material, and again set up a pair with that next material. And so another time we will continue and do the exact same format, looking at the different recipes for each of the other corresponding inputs to make sure when you're looking at these, you're matching the right pair of inputs to the particular input material you're looking at. Now that we have all the factories set up, everything now knows what it is creating and to deposit it into the corresponding launch pads. We can submit all this, make sure it's all saved, and now what we will do is take each of these stages we have created and start linking them all together. So what we shall do is, if we start at the top launch pad with our biotechs, and you'll see that if you click on the launch pad and with the little 3 arrows pointing to each other routes icon, it'll tell you it has a whole bunch of stuff coming inside and out. For once per each of the input materials that are coming to it from our pairs, we must then click on them and create a route and tell them to go to the factory, to the biotech factory, in order for it to actually receive the materials it needs to make the biotechs. So our construction blocks, our nanites will each have a single route, creating a route, sending them to the factory towards the center of our configuration. Now we have all 3 things routed. It now knows where to get its materials to make the biotechs, and what we shall now do now is take the route of the biotech itself that our factory is outputting to our launch pad and create a route with that to send it to the high tech in the center of our configuration so it knows where to get its biotechs from to craft. And again, we will mirror this process with all the inputs going to the middle factory, and then that output going to the core factory, and connect all 3 of these setups with the flow so the materials are flowing between each step. So you'll see that our center core of factories have now lost their red ring, meaning they now know where to get their materials, they know what they're making, and they know where to deposit it afterwards, so they are set up ready for the process. Our outer ring of factories is still showing their red because they don't know where to get their materials needed to do their production. In order to be able to set these things up, you are going to have to deposit the first tier of materials in order to be able to create the routes we need for them to know where they're getting materials from. Later on in the video, towards the end, I will put up a list that will show you the materials you need for a single setup of this. That one particular setup will allow you to, once you deposit it, allow the factories to run for 4 days continuously without you needing to interfere with it, creating this whole passive process. And then in 4 days, you'll have all your outputs ready to pick up and deposit another lot. For now, we shall go grab our materials and we will deposit them, and then we can show you how to route the materials needed.
For this setup on one planet for 4 days, this is the exact amount of materials that you need to be able to get it running for 4 days worth. For every other interaction that you've done with the planet i.e. setting a planet up, this is the part where you need to actually go to the customs office for that planet. So if you bring up your planetary industry, it'll tell you what planet that you've set up on, which also corresponds to which customs office it is. So i.e. planet 1, you'd go to the customs office 1. There is a little trick with this, just in case that you are worried about getting attacked, getting ganked. So you bring up your customs office window, bring up your inventory window where your materials are. If you warp to the customs office, when you are just coming out of warp, as soon as the bar at the bottom starts dropping even a millimeter, you can drag everything into there and drop it. So the easiest way to do it is to highlight it all, hold it over. As soon as you see your warp dropping, even a slight bit, you can let go and it will transfer everything in there. It gives literally no time for someone to lock you up and attack you. So as you can see, we're getting closer, closer, closer. As soon as we see that warp bar dropping, we can let go of our materials at the customs office. It literally gives no one time to be able to lock you up. So if someone does attack you now, you've got nothing of any worth apart from your ship. But we're at the customs office, where we need to be, at our barren planet. Now everything else that you can do with this, you don't have to be here. Again, we can go back to our playground station and do everything in the comfort of being tethered to a station. Right, so for the next part of this, now you've got everything in the customs office as shown like this, with the amount of quantities that you should have there for a 4-day run for one planet, is bring up your planetary industry. You'll need to go into the planet, so press the planet view, because we need to write down which launch pad is taking what. So if we take the first launch pad, so the upper one, we'll click it. We got the Barren launch pad G6 YBU, so I'll write that down. So we know the top launch pad, its code is G6 YBU. And why do we need this? Because if we have a look at the customs office, if you bring down the right hand drop down menu, it'll show the codes for the launch pads, and this will tell you which items you need to put into which launch pad. So what I like to do is keep track of what things are being made. So in the first launch pad, we'll bring up the routes and we know it's making biotech, so we've already wrote down the launch pad code for it, so I will now write biotech. And then we'll do the same for the next launch pad. So if we're going to clockwise motion, is N6 YBU, and that is making supercomputers, or having supercomputers. And then the last launch pad is J6 YBU, and it'll be having cryoprotectant. And just like any good artist, here's one I made earlier. So ignoring the launchpad codes, because this is for a different planet, because we've already wrote down biotech, supercomputers and cryoprotectant and their launch codes in a customs office place, we'll be splitting them off by each one. So biotech, which will be in launchpad, for instance CW802, would need all of these materials and their quantities. So it would need 7,680 toxics, 7,680 biofuels, proteins, bacteria, and then it will also need 15,360 of the reactive metals. And then we follow that on with supercomputers, which will be 6UYN2. So this is why it is important to know your launch codes and what needs to go into them. If you mess this up, it won't make anything on the planet. Bear in mind, this never changes, so once you've got everything set up, with your launchpad codes, they will always stay the same. Every 4 days, you'll just be inputting new materials. So if we go to our customs office, remember we can do this while tethered safely, so we don't have to be at the customs office. So we're going to do the first launchpad, so the top one, if we remember. So we will need G6, which we're on, and we're doing biotech, which is G6. So we need 7,680 of the toxic metals. So if you hold shift, then drag it across, then you can type in the number. Biofuels 7680, proteins 7680, bacteria 7680, and then reactive metals at 15,360. And as you can see, we've nearly filled that launch pad up, and it'll slowly start using these, start sending these off to its factories to make the products. You have a transfer cost, so none of this is transferred until you press transfer, and you have to do it on the screen. If you switch screens, if you switch launch pads, it'll get rid of this and you'll have to do it again. But your transfer cost is based on your custom code skills. So each level of that, you can drop your transfer cost down. So press transfer, it's come out of my bank, my wallet, and it's in there now. And then the next one, we are going to N6 YBU. And you'll have nothing left in the orbital customs office. Everything now will be back on the planet. So if we open the Planetary industry window up again, view.
Now that we have all our resources sitting on the planet, we can complete the final step. When you do these setups in the future, depositing the same amount of materials every 4 days when you resupply these stations, you will not have to repeat this next step. Everything will go into automatic production. Being our first setup, again, we need every one of our factories that have the red rings blinking that's saying, I don't know where to get resources. We now need to create the routes and let them know where they can get their resources from in order to produce. So what we'll do, and the easiest way to find it is you look at each individual factory. If you pick any factory to start with kind of thing and repeat the process for every one of them, you'll see it has two little red boxes on its info screen telling you the two particular materials that it needs in order to make it each of its items. And obviously every different recipe in each factory has a different two items. What you'll do is you will go from its corresponding launchpad to those factories, and you'll see a little box icon amongst your tabs, and this is the storage. This will tell you what is currently sitting in the pad, and you will find the two materials to that particular factory, and you will select the material, one of the materials one by one that you need. Once you select them, you'll see a create route button, and you will create a route to the factory that needs it. And then you'll confirm the route, and then you will sit and you will repeat this process for every one of the factories till every factory has both its inputs routed to it. You'll know if you've done this correctly, as you can see that the factory red box will then become an orange box saying, I have this item. You'll see that now we've added both input materials to the factory. It now knows where it's getting its stuff from, what it's making, and where it's putting them. The red ring will now disappear, letting you know that all is sweet and ready to go. And now we just run through and repeat that exact same, check the materials, route the materials. Now we've added everything. You can see that all the red rings have disappeared. Every little factory is happy with our process. So now once we hit submit, the factories will kick into gear. You'll see all your outer ones will lose their little white ring on their symbol. But if you look closely at them, you'll see that they're starting to form the white ring within its logo, starting its process of making things. As these outer factories produce first, once they finish, they will deposit it into the launch pad. The launch pad will then be able to send that over to the next tier of factory that will make its item. Once it makes its item, it'll then again put it back into the launch pad, which will feed it to the center, making our wetware mainframes. And this process will automatically work for the next 4 days. You can come back in 4 days, pick up the wetwares that have been made to take to market or to use them, depending on what your needs for them are, and you'll be able to drop off the next supplier 4 days material. And every route from here on forward, you'll just have to go to the customs office, deposit your materials, get yourself safe in space, separate it into each of the launch pads, put everything down onto the planet, and as you've just hit submit and everything, all the materials have been taken out of it, it will automatically do that process going forward.
So in terms of profit of what you can make, there is a potential to make, with its current prices as of today, 2,488,000 per one. You'd make 48 wetwares on one planet 4 days. If you've got your skills down low for your tax and your broker's fee, there is a potential income for one planet every 4 days of 24.5 million ISK. The only thing you have to do is input your materials every 4 days into the customs office. So this is bear in mind on the average buy of bacteria, biofuels, chiral, electrolytes, oxygen, proteins, reactive, toxic and water, of all of that into cost, along with skills, which are accounting, broker relations and your custom code expertise. All of these drop everything down by a percentage. Plus, if you manage to get Caldari Navy up high enough, each level adds another slight percentage. Every one of these will increase your profit margin. Now, these prices do fluctuate. You can sell straight away for 2.2. So each planet, 4 days worth of materials, you will need oxygen, 7,680. Biofuels, 7,680. Chiral Structures, 7,680. Toxic metals, 15,360. Proteins, 15,360. Electrolytes, 15,360. Reactive metals, 23,040. Bacteria, 23,040. Water, 23,040. So there is a potential for a nice profit. You will need to invest to start off with, but once you've got things making, you will soon be able to recoup these costs. So as with anything within Eve, there isn't just one way to go. We've just shown you the wetware mainframes because it's personally what I do. But another one that will take the same setup as we've got is integrity response drones. The materials will be different to this, but as you go into the planet, you can see what materials things need to be able to create for the integrity response drones. So if we press information on this, you would need gel matrix, planetary vehicles and hazmat detection systems. You would need to know what materials create into this. So for the gel matrix, superconductors, biocells and oxidides, and then everything else is pretty much the same. There are other P4 factory setups to make different items. If this is something you'd like to see, leave a comment below and we can get a video created for you.
Alright, this has been El Diablo. I hope this helps you guys out. Fly safe, and if you don't fly safe, fly dangerous.
And I've been the Mad Rambo. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more videos.